The legend of Beren and Luthien is one of Tolkien's most beautiful creations. The power of the Silmarils is taken to a more understandable level, and Melkor, also known as Morgoth, himself seems almost human. So as a ancillary story to the main Lord of the Rings lore, it is absolutely beautiful. If you want to know more about it, stay tuned. Welcome to Biblicultus, where I review books that I find interesting in the topics of religion, philosophy, history, and fiction. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, and comment on the video. Doing these things really helps the channel out to grow. Also, follow me on X and check out my merch store. I will put the description here on the screen like I always do. Also, for those that are new to the channel, please note that as I go through the video, if I have a particular concept or element that I'm discussing that I want to expand upon, I will put a note here on the bottom and I will put those additional things in the show notes. So you can click that and read them as you wish if you want to. Now today I am reviewing Beren and Luthien by J.R.R. Tolkien. This particular edition is from HarperCollins 2017. In the pinned comment, I will leave two links. One would be for my list of books. Every book I've ever reviewed on this channel will be in that list. And if you buy it through that link, it would really help the channel out. The channel gets a small percentage of the sale as an Amazon affiliate. And I also put a general link because no matter what else you buy through that link, it also gives a small percentage to the channel and it really helps us out and I appreciate it. You can either go with the edition that I select in the list or you can pick any edition. I love this edition because it has really nice plates on it. The art is beautiful and it really fits the mood. And although it's not a very fancy edition, the plates really give quality to the print. So in that sense, it makes it worth your money. Some of the print is not that good. Some of the letters are kind of erased, etc. So whoever did the printing didn't do that great of a job, but it's okay. It could be my edition in particular that has some of these imperfections. Now, the first review I've ever made on this channel was actually Tolkien as well. So of course that means I have an affinity for Tolkien's work. Although it's somewhat strange because although I love Tolkien, at the same time, going into that world, which is so immense and so complex, feels like a waste of time sometimes. And I've mentioned this before with fiction. As I was going through my formal education, I've always felt odd reading fiction because I could be using that time to read history books and philosophy books and theology books. So fiction as a category has always been a little strange for me, a little distant for me. And only in the last decade have I decided to take fiction and literature a little bit more seriously because I've realized the importance of it and the benefit from it. So when I was younger, I would read Tolkien and I would just give it up quickly because I just felt I didn't want to go into this fictitious world. I didn't really get the point. As I got older, I realized there's a lot of point to it and a lot of beauty in it. It's not only the wondrous language that matters, but also the meaningfulness of entering fiction. And I do see it almost like a vacation from heavier reading, but at the same time, a lot of fiction carries a lot of philosophy, theological insights, and sociological import. So reading them does matter. And I would even dare to say that if people only read fiction, if it's good quality ones, they can still get a lot of philosophical insights and important lessons from them. So I've changed a little bit in my perspective on fiction as the years have gone by. Now, like I mentioned in that first review, Christopher Tolkien did a labor of love for his father's work. And we owe him a huge debt because he is the one that painstakingly went through all his father's notebooks and annotations and unpublished works and put them together in a way that makes sense. And when you read books published through Christopher Tolkien, he usually will give you a preliminary description of how he got the work, where did he find it, how his father evolved the story, etc. And then he will give you the text itself. So there's a feel of scholarly investigation when you read these books, which is fascinating. And that is the same here. He will go through the evolution of Beren and Luthien, how it changed, why it could have changed, his speculations on it, and then he will organize and present the main story and then go through different versions of it. So I'll go through some of the elements in the story itself, but without spoiling it to the best of my ability. I usually will present conceptions and ideas in the work and not necessarily give you plot twists or anything like this. So of all the different versions of this story in the book, the first one is my favorite, which is called the Tale of Tinuviel. I prefer the idea of Beren being a gnome instead of a human. That's a change he does later on. And the context of the story is very different than a typical Tolkien world. It feels different when you're navigating in it. You have the elves and you have the geographic dynamic of Tolkien. You recognize names, etc. But at the same time, there's something that feels different. Like Luthien herself, she is presented as a mystifying dancer. And that component is also very different. You can clearly see the influence of the fairy tale on Tolkien at this point in his writing. But of course, Tolkien improves on the fairy tale, which is amazing because in some other works that I've reviewed, they would take the fairy tale as a trope or as a basis and then just ruin the whole thing. Just destroy the very idea of the fairy tale. Eliminate beauty out of it, extract crudeness, disturbingly vulgar. But of course, Tolkien, being the genius that he was, he does the complete opposite. He beautifies the fairy tale. He doesn't see the commonality and the basic moral of the story in the fairy tale, but he actually sees the theology, the magic, and doing this improves in the fairy tale. Those that are familiar with the lore of Lord of the Rings, and The Hobbit, and the Silmarillion, etc., will be familiar with a lot of the things that are happening here. Keep in mind, though, that the original story has a lot of different elements. For example, you have Melkor, who is Morgoth, and you have Tevildo, Lord of Cats, who is later on Thu, who eventually becomes Sauron. You see an evolution of these characters, and it is quite striking. And what makes them different is that they're approachable. It's closer to a child's tale than what it became later on. Melkor seems a reasonable character. What I mean by this is reasonable in the sense of containing mundane lusts and being conversational. Now keep in mind, Melkor is a darker entity. He's supposed to be the fallen angel. He's the Satan of the Silmarillion, Sauron being his lieutenant. But here Melkor is an approachable character, wearing the Iron Crown with the Silmarils, etc. But there's something comical about him that is different. Same thing with Tevildo. He is the Lord of Cats. And obviously, having an actual cat in the world of Tolkien itself is mind-blowing. But I actually liked it. Some people probably would hate the idea, but the fantastical element of it, the child-friendly component of this edition, I think is great. And I think, as a side point, I thought of Lovecraft, because Lovecraft not only loved cats, but he had actually stories about cats. Tevildo is also a very silly character in a way. I mean, he works in the kitchen. He is kind of like a grumpy cat, right? And again, this is quite a distance from Thu, the darker manifestation of this character who stops being a cat now and becomes something else when Tolkien writes the Lay of Luthien. So let me read a part of that, because you'll see how the character evolved and started getting a lot darker and a lot stranger. Quote, "Men called him Thu, and as a god in after days beneath his rod, bewildered bowed to him, and made his ghastly temples in the shade. Not yet by men enthralled adored, now was he Morgoth's mightiest lord, master of wolves, whose shivering howl forever echoed in the hills, and foul enchantments and dark sigildry did weave and wield. In glamoury that necromancer held his hosts of phantoms and of wandering ghosts, of misbegotten or spell-wronged, monsters that about him thronged, working his bidding dark and vile, the werewolves of the wizard's isle. Now keep in mind, it's not only a switch in the mood of the character, but there's also a switch in the genre, because he goes from being a cat to being associated with wolves, whereas in this original story, there's a flip to that you'll see when you read it. Now, the same situation happens with Melkor, so I'll read another quote that's related to him. Now, again, in the case of Melkor, that we know as Morgoth, in the original story, he is very approachable. You can knock on the door, basically, and walk up to him and have a conversation. He's willing sometimes to just forgive you if you praise him, for example. He is willing to have you around. He's not that dark and brooding. He's more like a mobster of some sort. But then you have this. Then Morgoth came for the last time. In those great wars he dared to climb. From subterranean throne profound, the rumor of his feet a sound, of rumbling earthquake underground. Black armored, towering, iron crowned, he issued forth his mighty shield, a vast unblazoned sable field, with shadow like thundercloud, and over the gleaming king it bowed, as huge aloft like mace he hurled, the hammer of the underworld, groaned, clanging to ground it rumbled, down like a thunderbolt and crumbled. The rocks beneath it, smoke upstarred, a pit yawned and a fire darted. So clearly, the mood here is darker and more ominous, and I would say that he even goes further down that road eventually. So this will be kind of an intermediary development of the character. Now, of course, the prose is beautiful. The verses are absolutely sublime, and it is a shame that Tolkien was not able to convince his publishers to get this out in print as it should have been. Now, I understand that there's a background to that. The Hobbit came out, and they wanted another Hobbit book, as they called it. And Lord of the Rings is the result of that request, which is not quite The Hobbit in the sense that the publishers wanted, but it was a hit. But he was never able to really return and publish what he really wanted to publish. And that's why we owe so much gratitude to his son, who was able to actually get that done for us. So when it comes to all of Tolkien's stories, and I've done a few, and I'll create a playlist of them, this is actually one of my favorites, just because it has all the components of a classic fairy tale and placed in Tolkien's world, but with a twist, with a sweeter, lighter element. And in contrast with a lot of his other work, it is actually refreshing. Now, I tend to like and enjoy the darker stuff, but sometimes this lighter aspect is a very nice reprieve from that. And I appreciated that, and I recommend you read it. So check out the affiliate link and see if you can find an edition that you like. And please remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, and comment on the video. Doing all these things helps the channel out, and I appreciate it. Thank you for being with me. See you next time.